Michaela. Welcome back.
Thank you.
How are you doing this week?
I'm okay. I'm better than last week.
Well, I like to hear that. I was hoping this week, if you're okay with it, we could kind of jump into a new model called the complex PTSD.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Work on some of your trauma, maybe, just like introducing it.
Okay.
Okay, so this model summarizes the surrounding trauma you've experienced and the ways in which avoidance and escape behaviors play into the maintenance of that trauma. And I can kind of give you some examples of what avoidance and escape behaviors are later on. Okay, so some goals of this therapy would be to transform your uncontrolled re-experiencing of the trauma into controllable memories. So basically saying like, you're not going to forget the trauma because it will always be a part of your life, but we're going to make sure it doesn't cast like a dark shadow on your present moments.
That sounds great.
Good. I was hoping you would like this model.
Yeah.
So will help you try to develop a compassionate view of yourself in the world. So when thinking of the trauma, it'll feel less real and vivid.
Okay.
Good. So do you know what an escape behavior is?
No, I don't.
So there's 3 levels of escape behaviors. There's thoughts, emotions, and behavior. So thoughts, this is like quickly thinking of something else or talking yourself into believing that the trauma didn't happen.
Okay.
Do you feel like you do that?
Yes, I feel like I do that all the time.
Okay, so we can work on some ways that we can avoid doing that.
Okay.
The next is emotions. So this is like being angry with the perpetrator or yourself for the trauma that happened, or blaming yourself for the trauma.
Okay. I feel like I do this one less than the first one.
Okay. So the third is behavior. So this is like attempting to take one's life, self-harm, doing high-risk behavior like staying on the edge of a bridge, or acting aggressively towards others.
This one's not done as much.
So you say the thoughts
Yeah.
in your minds?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. So do you know what an avoidance behavior is?
No, I haven't heard of it before.
So these are like things that you do to like distract yourself like in the moment. So this would be like avoiding places, activities, objects, foods, and sounds that remind you of the trauma. Avoiding interaction with your own body, like not looking in the mirror. Sleeping less to avoid nightmares. Social isolation to have like little simulation. And keeping too busy to actually deal with the traumatic memories.
I feel like I use some of those, yeah.
So later on, we can just work on some healthy avoidance and escape behaviors rather than like the unhealthy ones.
Okay.
So although some of these avoidance and escape behaviors work in the short term, they can lead to more intense trauma and re-experiencing that trauma in the long term because you're just temporary like avoiding it.
Okay.
You're not actually working through it. So I'm going to do an activity with you. So think of a ball. You don't have to think because I have one.
Okay.
So I want you to put this in the water and push down the ball into the water.
Okay.
And you can use 1 or 2 fingers.
Okay.
So once you push it under, what happens? So say like we were talking, maybe like, hi Michaela.
Okay.
How's your day?
It's good.
Good. So what did you do earlier today?
I went out to eat with my mom, and then
See what happened?
it came back to the surface.
Right. So basically what this is like showing is that the ball jumps back up higher the deeper you push it. So your traumatic experience works similar. So eventually you get distracted from the task of avoidance or escape, which was holding this down.
Mm-hmm.
And it jumps back up to the surface. So like we were just having a regular conversation, and then it just popped back up.
Yeah.
When you least expected it. So trauma kind of does the same when you are using those short-term avoidance and escape behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for participating.
Oh, I like that activity.
Me too. I always like getting my clients involved.
Yeah.
It helps them, I think, like connect to it more.
Yeah, I liked it.
So if you would like and you feel comfortable, I was going to ask if you could think of a situational trigger like a place, object, a person, activity, smell, or sound, anything that like comes to your mind that you would want to work through.
Okay. Yeah, there is a trigger. I experienced a really bad head injury whenever I was in Jamaica.
I'm sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, it was a really traumatic experience, and I'm having a hard time working through it.
So, like, what emotions, when you think of that trigger, do you like surround it? Like, what thoughts?
Um, it makes me feel very upset and kind of stressed because I was not able to be with my family. So, yeah.
So, like, during, like, when a trauma happens, our brain, like, memorizes things and it remembers three things: emotions, thoughts, and sensations. So, emotions would be like disgust, fear, and panic. So, I'm assuming you were just feeling like fear and panic because
Yes.
you were in a foreign country, you didn't have your family with you. And thoughts could be like anything from, like, I will not survive this, or why did
Yeah.
this happen to me?
Yeah,
Do you feel any of those?
definitely the why did this happen to me?
And sensations could be like smells or pain or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
like, the things our brain memorizes, like, are associated with that trauma. So, like, can you remember anything like that, like, that reminds you, like, today, if you were back, since you're back here now in America, is there anything that reminds you of like that and makes you think of it, like, automatically?
Yeah, it definitely is like harder for me to like go to ERs or stuff like that because since I just had such a kind of horrible experience in like the Jamaican ER, that just seems to be like one of the triggers for me.
Yeah, and that's always something that we can work through. It will take time,
Okay.
but that is definitely a trigger that I will be willing to help you with.
Okay.
Become more comfortable. So there's something called a secondary trauma. So this is like after the trauma, like, victims try to understand what happened and try to make sense of it. So most think they're responsible for what happens, and that's where, like, it comes in, like, the self-blaming, like it was somehow my fault or I'm bad. But I don't know if in your situation you really feel that way.
No, I definitely feel like it was just like an accident that just occurred.
So some of these thoughts sometimes do come with, like, shame, guilt, and loneliness. Like, they could become part of, like, yourself and your self-esteem and the way that you view yourself in the world.
Yeah, not necessarily. I think I felt that more towards the beginning, but now that it's been a little bit over a year since it happened, I don't feel those as much.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad.
Yeah.
And that's just, like, another thing, like, we can work through, like, some long-term consequences, like, just because it has been a year and we're just now working through it, like, it's better to start now than later.
Yeah, I
So-
agree.
So some long-term consequences could be, like, avoiding the present. It will remain a trigger. The experience remains real and intense because the memory is unsorted.
Yeah.
And the traumatic experience usually feels overwhelming and uncontrollable because it jumps back up, like the water ball that we did. Little monsters become stronger. Do you know what little monsters are?
Mm-mm.
They're like the little voices in your head that, like, tell you things about yourself that aren't true, like the I am bad or I am not worthy, things like that.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience any of those?
Not really, no. Sometimes I feel like I might get a little monster that tells me like I'm not good enough because like maybe that's what like the trauma did to me or something. Maybe that.
Well, that's another thing we can work on is, like, whenever those little monsters do pop up in your head, we'd be able to, like, recognize them and, like, just squash them and be like, oh, I know that's not true.
Okay.
So how we can treat this complex PTSD, we could do some imaginative exposure, which would, like, detangle the trigger from the trauma experience, and your brain learns the traumas in the past. So this would kind of be like doing something, like, kind of similar to the trauma, and, like, showing you that it is okay. And we could also do discrimination training, which helps you revise your formal explanation and develop a more reasonable view of yourself in the world and, like, why these things happen to you. Which one sounds like it would be more the route you wanted to take?
Probably the first one.
Okay, we definitely can do that. So, like, just like my personal opinion, like, nobody can really change the past, and I think that it's really important that the past needs to be experienced as gone by in order to unburden and live a more meaningful life in the present. So we can work on developing and fulfilling your personal goals and values.
Okay, I think that sounds great.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to start this complex PTSD and trauma network training with you.
I am too. I'm hoping to work through some of these issues together.
So do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't think so.
All right, well, it was nice seeing you, and I'm looking forward to working with you again next week.
Okay, I'll see you next week.